back, everyone. I hope you had a great lunch and were able to just kind of reset a little bit as we go into our afternoon session. So before we get started, as we mentioned earlier before break, we talked a little bit about our sponsors who helped to support us during the year and who really, are there for us. And so first up, I would like to introduce you many of our middle school counselors. Some of our elementary and high school know her, but Christina Leigh from Ed South is here to talk with us. She has given us so much support over the years, actually come and done classroom lessons, PowerPoints that she's provided. And so we're just really thankful for them and all that they do for us. So Christina.
Great, thank you. I don't know if I'm showing up here. My Ed South. Okay, great. I see Robert, you put the website up. Thank you. Hello, counselors and social workers. If you're joining us, it's great to be with you this morning on this very strange, sleeting day. I hope all of you are cozy with your slippers on and enjoying this day of professional development. I'm happy to be here representing Ed South today, and I once again just want to thank you for all you do for our students in Metro Nashville Public Schools. I appreciate your work. It's been my great honor to work with you through this time and try to find new ways to reach our students here in Metro. I have some sad news to report that Ed South is winding down our in-person services. So unfortunately, this will be my last semester being able to work with you in person. So if you are interested in utilizing any of our services, our Cooter career assessments, our transitioning to middle school, transitioning to high school presentations are really great for the spring, as well as any of our career and college resources. I am still available to come work with your students in person, which I think is probably unlikely depending on what your school allows, but I'm also working with many of you via Teams, and that's worked really well. So if you're interested in any of these resources, please reach out to me at clane@edsouth.org, and I'd be happy to come to your school virtually or in person. After this semester, our resources will be available to you though. We are recording all of our presentations and the worksheets that accompany those, and they will be on our ecampustours.com platform for your ability to download those and use them into next year. Cooter, however, will not be available. So you'll be receiving more information about this, an email, but if you are utilizing Cooter now, your students who have taken the assessments will be able to still access their accounts, but you will not be able to access your administrator account after June 30. So if you'd like to print any of your students' assessments or anything like that, or keep records, I can help with that too. That will be available until June 30. And like I said, I will be able to, I'll be sending you an email with more information about where to find our resources as we move them to the eCampus Tours platform. And I would love to come and work with you throughout the rest of the semester. And I hope everyone has a great day. It's been my great honor to work with you. And I look forward to seeing you in person again sometime soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Christina. And we were so sad to hear that news last week. But we know that, hopefully we'll still get to work together and whatever comes next for you. And we just thank you for all the support, again, that you have given to our counselors and our schools during this time. And yeah, we will definitely probably be reaching out for this final semester to ensure we have all those resources available, ready to go, know where to access them. And I know counselors are thinking, what are we going to use for career assessments now? So that will be another conversation to come, but we will definitely have that on the agenda for the future. So thank you again for all you've done for MNPS, the students, and our counselors. So next up, Mr. Rebon has the Army National Guard video that we will show. Again, remember these sponsors are helping to give you the vouchers that you will get at the end of our last PD here. And with those, you'll be able to buy materials and supplies, primarily resources and supplies that you can use in your classroom lessons, small groups, or individual sessions. So thank you to our sponsors for their support.
So the Tennessee Strong Act is a tuition assistance program that provides reimbursement to any college in the state of Tennessee up to 100% of the highest tuition in the state. People who want to serve and who are currently serving in the Tennessee National Guard who want to experience a debt-free college experience can use it at any accredited community college or four-year university in the state of Tennessee. Anyone looking for more information can reach us at 1-800-GO-GUARD and nationalguard.com/TN.
And thank you again. Hopefully, if you guys have any questions about our sponsors and what they offer, please feel free to reach out and we can get you additional information. Next up, Leigh Bagwell is back, and she is going to be talking about integrating social and emotional learning with career development to prepare college and career ready students. If you guys remember, within your counselor standards, college and career readiness and development is one of them at all tier levels, just not high school. So therefore, this is an important piece. Sometimes I think we do separate out, and Leigh will talk about this, I'm sure, separate out college and career readiness and career development and SEL, but there is a way to integrate and link them. So welcome back, Leigh, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
All right, good to be back. Of course, you're not going to get me just for the morning. I'm going to spend all day with you all. So hopefully you all were able to kind of step away, reset your brain, process a little bit, and then kind of refresh so that we can come back this afternoon and talk about how do we support our students in thinking about both SEL and college and career readiness. We know that even we have these three domains that we work in, but we work with the whole child. We work with the whole student. And so their academic success, their college and career readiness, and their social and emotional development are all intertwined together. And we really can't, if we do it right, we can't separate those out. We've got to integrate those together so that we can ensure that our students are prepared for whatever comes next for them. So we're going to spend some time this afternoon talking about what does that look like. Sounds great, Leigh, but like on the ground, what does it look like? So I'm going to move to share my screen again and make sure that the technology is all cool and up and going. All right, so I think from what I see, I think you guys can see my screen now. If not, somebody will tell me. Okay, so let's first start by talking about what does a modern day post-secondary student look like? No, I'm going to go one step back. In order for us, I think, to be all on the same page, I want us to kind of come together with a shared definition of college and post-secondary. When we refer to those terms, I am referring to the broad scope of opportunities our students have. I think a lot of times we hear college readiness, college and career, and we think about a four-year university. But we know that, especially in Tennessee, our students have so many amazing options for work after high school. So when I talk post-secondary, when I talk college and career, we really are talking about the whole broad scope of opportunities that include the four-year university, but that also include two-year community colleges, TCATs, military, apprenticeships, going directly into the workplace. That, you know, we've got some options, and there's not a a ranking of which is better. It's about finding the right fit for our students to help them as they move along their pathway, as they seek out their dreams and what they want for their lives. So I think it's always important to not make assumptions, but to be really intentional about what we're talking about when it comes to college and career and post-secondary. So that being said, I want us to take a look at the profile of today's post-secondary student. What research has told us is that 64% of college students work. And again, this is college, meaning all options. 40% of those are working full time. 49% of college students are completely financially independent from their parents. 6% have served or are serving in the armed forces. 24% of college students have children or other dependents that they're responsible for. And 57% of students are living independently. This means away from their parents, and also they're not on campus housing. So they truly are living on their own. So when we think about how do we prepare our students to be successful in post-secondary, I think we need to stop and think about what does that look like. One of the things I loved about MNPS that we did when we were there was the profile of an MNPS graduate, the profile of a MNPS middle school student, an elementary student, and a high school student. And I think that's really helpful in grounding us and thinking about what are we working towards. Because we have all these opportunities for students, it's hard to really finitely define what that looks like, and it's hard to have a really specific target for what we're preparing them for. But I think when we look at what research is telling us, this profile is a good kind of place to aim towards. And so when you look at this, one, I would encourage you, and I'm going to hold off on our discussion right now, but think about, how is this post-secondary student different than your own experience? How is it similar? And then how does that, as we think about that profile, as we think about that student, how does that compare to the profile of the students that we're working with now? Will many of them experience many different things as they transition out of high school? Or are they on a pathway that is similar now? If we've got high school students that are working, are they helping to care for other siblings and that kind of thing? What is the involvement of their parents and community as far as preparing them for post-secondary? So I think this is just a good kind of grounding point for us as we move forward. So let's talk about, what does this college and career look like? What is career development? If we think about career development along a pathway or spectrum, there are three distinct kind of benchmarks, periods of growth and development. The first period is really the career awareness. And then from there, they move into career exploration and then into career planning. And so you have this trajectory of development that really does guide how the student developmentally can prepare for the world after high school. So let's break this down a little bit. Typically in career awareness, we're seeing this around the elementary age. So, like Megan said, we don't wait until they're in high school to start talking about careers. In the elementary ages, we have the opportunity to really start to build their awareness and their skill set for being successful when they move out of high school. I think elementary counselors, you know, we are good at doing our career days and career weeks and fairs, and really exposing students to the possibility of different careers around them. And that's really important because it starts them dreaming about what is possible for their life and for what they can do and how they can contribute to their communities. We're also teaching them a lot about the skills that they're going to need to be successful. And not surprisingly, the same skills that they're going to need to be successful in college and career are the same skills they need to be successful now when they're in school. Problem solving, you know, behavior regulation, self-control, like a lot of those skills we're going to foster, and we may not foster within the context of career exploration, but as we help them to build these skills, we are creating opportunities for them to be more likely to use these skills in a career setting, in a college setting. So the work that our elementary folks do, around career awareness is really, really important and really critical to that foundation. Typically what we see once they move from awareness into exploration happens around that middle school age, thinking about what they are cognitively able to start processing and thinking about, moving from kind of the concrete thinking to more abstract thinking. We really want at this point students to start exploring different careers. It's one thing to be aware that there are all these possibilities. The next natural step then is so what does it mean to be this type of career? What skills do you need? How do you prepare to become this kind of career? And that helps students begin to kind of narrow down their search and thinking about, you know, what is it that I want to do? What skills and talents and expertise do I have or do I want to attain so that I can then go out into the world, into my community, and perform this career, to have this job. So we start to see that deepening knowledge build when they move into this exploration phase, typically in middle school. And then the last part of that career development piece is the career planning. And that typically we start looking at very concrete steps towards planning for their careers when they get to high school. This is why it's important that we do the awareness and exploration work prior to them getting to high school, because in high school, they're really starting to see connections between their career goals with some of the courses they're taking, particularly in Metro with all the academies and the opportunities for career and technical education. You know, the students are really, really fortunate that they can start really seeing, what do I need to do? This is, I've had some experience now in this career field. How do I move towards that? What is that going to look like? How do I connect what I do in high school to what I need to do after high school? And so those very specific action steps around planning, completing educational programs, understanding the relationship between what they're doing now with what they'll do in the future, happens a lot at this high school stage. So really, if you go back and think about that arrow, that trajectory is a really good guide for us as we think about how do we approach the career development of our students. We again know that it's one of our domains in school counseling. We have standards, we have expectations around helping students to hit these benchmarks, but it gives us a guide for doing that really important work. So because we know we do some of that, let's talk about what does this kind of look like as we think about career awareness, and then kind of juxtapose that with what we know is the work that the national model suggests for school counselors, that our standards suggest for school counselors. And we see kind of three themes or three ways that school counselors are recognized for really making significant gains in helping our students to be college and career ready. And those 3 areas around academic advising, social and emotional support, and career development. So here's what we know is happening in that career awareness phase with our elementary folks. We're starting to see students to see in terms of academic advising, help students to understand their own academic information. I think back to when we were doing, and the name just escaped me as I started talking, the kind of the data meetings where we would help our students and work with teachers to help our students understand what their educational and academic data means. When we would show their data chats, came right back. We'd do our data chats and we'd show them what their scores mean, and we'd talk about their gains and really give them a sense of ownership in that. That's a really important piece as we think about instilling in our students that desire and aspiration for career, for college, for something beyond just school. So as school counselors, we get the opportunity to do that. We also start connecting those academic opportunities that students will have in middle and high school, and we're realistic. We don't go into the kindergarten classroom and start telling them what subjects they are going to take in high school. But when we talk about how the skills that they're learning in one grade help them in the next grade, we're again building on that foundation that students can begin to understand that what they're doing now does matter when they're an adult, does matter when they want to go on into a career or go on into further education and training. So just establishing that and making that kind of introducing that concept to them at the elementary age is really important. And it's going to help all the other pieces kind of fall into place when students come to each particular phase, understanding that there's a connection with what they're doing and that they have some ownership of what they're doing. So that's part of the academic advising piece. Social and emotional support that school counselors provide through career awareness. We spend a lot of time talking about communication and listening skills. And we know these are critically important in the career field. In most career fields, we know it's important. We have started, I've seen a lot of good work being done talking about social media literacy, helping students interpret what they're seeing online. Even at a young age, they start to see information and they're processing that and figuring out, well, how does that fit in my understanding of the world? And again, those skills are going to be critical when it's time for them to move into the world of work. Talking about self-management skills. Anytime that we're helping students identify their behaviors, identify ways to improve, teaching them to reflect on their choices. Those are all really important skills that will benefit them, not just when they're in a career, but as they move through middle school and high school. Can you imagine how much your high school counseling friends would love it if all of their ninth graders had really strong self-management skills when they arrived at high school? I mean, that would be like unbelievable, right? So when we can start to build these skills when they're young, it really does open the door to do deeper work with them as they move through secondary and then on into post-secondary. The third area that we impact career development in career awareness is that career development. So we look specifically at introducing students to different opportunities. I think, the standard community helpers, we've done a good job of identifying kind of those standard careers. Where we see some real innovation and some exciting work being done is expanding students' understanding to include STEAM and STEM careers, to think beyond those traditional occupations, particularly as it relates to gender roles. I love hearing high school student girls, particularly, that are like, I'm going to go into auto mechanics. And I'm like, that is awesome. Do you know how much money I could save if I knew how to fix my car? Like, holy moly, like that would be great. How many of us watch our, HGTV shows where they're, flipping and flopping houses and improving all those things. And I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I always think, man, if I knew how to do that, I would do so many things around this house. Those are non-traditional opportunities for women. When we see men that are passionate about going into nursing and even somewhat in early education, that's traditionally been a more female dominated career. We know the value of our male counterparts in education, in nursing. It's exciting to see students not be held back by what was. And so when we help build awareness and help students see, yeah, you can do these things, that it becomes really powerful, and helps them to broaden their scope of what's possible for themselves. So those are a lot of the ways that we currently are thinking about and practicing career development through that career awareness phase. When we look at career exploration and look through the same three lenses of academic advising, social and emotional support, and career development, we see an expansion of what happens at the elementary level. For academic advising, we spend time helping our students understand what are early post-secondary opportunities. What can they do in high school that will help them as they go on their search for their career, as they prepare, as they try to get involved with training for a particular occupation. Helping them see, especially financially, what they can do in high school, and how getting engaged in some of those dual enrollment opportunities, how that can save them money and open some more doors for them, can be really empowering for students. We also want to spend time helping them see, like, here are the opportunities that you have at this high school that you're going to go to. How do they connect to what you want to do in your life as you have deepened your career search, as you're exploring what it takes to be in a particular career field, the training and education required? What can you do in high school that would help you with that? Are there clubs that you can get involved with? Some of the student organizations can be a great learning space for our students. And so really just making them aware of what's possible and helping them start to develop that plan that aligns with what they're interested in. And that helps give more meaning to what they do in the classroom. A lot of students need to understand why they have to learn something. And that's fair. The old days of because I said so just don't work anymore. They have access to a lot of information, with their phones, with the internet. So helping them to see why, being in the classroom and learning these skills will help them in the future is important and can be a really significant strategy that our middle school folks utilize as they think about academic advising for their students. When it comes to social emotional support, we want to empower our students to develop self-advocacy skills. We want them to be able to speak up and to say, this is what I need, or, hey, I've got this skill. Here's how I can contribute and how I can help. A lot of students don't know how to do that. When you say to a student, can you talk to your teacher? Or what if you raise your hand? That seems like such a foreign concept to them. And so we want to give them the opportunity to learn and practice self-advocacy skills in a way that's appropriate. We know that sometimes students have self-advocacy skills that are not quite so appropriate for the classroom. So helping them to be able to identify what is the right way to get the help that you need. It's really powerful. We also want them to continue to have opportunities to cooperate and collaborate with others, to build those skills, to have experiences of working together. We know that there are very few jobs and careers where folks work in isolation. So being able to work together as a team, to know how to navigate that those relationships and move towards a shared goal is really important. So when we give them the opportunity to learn and practice those skills in middle school, we are helping to build their skill set and fill their toolbox with tools that are going to be really helpful for them. Again, not just in post-secondary, but also as they continue to move through K-12 with us. In terms of career development specifically, we want students to begin to research specific career interest and not just research the career interest, but understand how to research career interest, understand where are the resources where they can find more information, so that as they learn and experience more things, and as their interests further develop and expand and maybe shift, that they have the skills to then go back and see, now that I'm thinking this particular career, I know what to do to find out more information. So it's not just about learning about a specific career, but what does that process look like? And how do we ensure that they understand where to go and how to process and use that information? We also want them to begin to think through, how does this career interest connect to their pathway of study? We know that in Tennessee that they have to have this pathway where they take these CTE courses, or if they take, a math pathway or a English pathway, that it has a connection. There's a point and a reason why those classes are important in their journey to becoming what it is that they want to become. Again, it gives some relevance to the work and answers the question, why do I need to know this? And I think that's really important for our middle school students. So as we've gone through elementary and we've had some awareness, we've built on that and created some career exploration opportunities in middle school. And so now we've transferred to high school and we're looking at making some specific career plans. Within those same three kind of areas of work, when it comes to academic advising, this gets more concrete, right? Because they're now in high school and they're taking these classes, they have choices. They're starting to think about the programs that they want to look at after high school. So it's almost, it's a little clearer at the high school level. It's not easier, but it's clear because it's much more concrete. We've got the classes that they're taking, and we're talking about how these specific classes that they're in connect to other classes that are available and other opportunities that they have. So, academic advising for career planning is something I think that as high school counselors you do well, and is very much a part of the programs that you're offering to your students. When it comes to that social and emotional support, I hear a lot from high school counselors about how they feel like this is the area that they don't get to do as much with. And so hopefully today you'll be able to walk away seeing how when you connect these topics, when you think about social and emotional support along with academic advising and career development, that you really can integrate these and you can do some more social emotional support because we know that's so critical for our high school students. So what does that look like? Again, we see self-advocacy skills necessary in high school. And because they have more choice in high school, it makes sense that they're going to have to practice and use more self-advocacy skills. So when we're talking about all the choices that they make regarding their program of study, how are we then supporting also the skill of advocating for themselves and to be able to articulate what they want and what they need. There's great opportunities for integration there. We also talk about decision-making, right? Like the classes that you make, how you conduct yourself in a class, when students are struggling academically, we talk about decision-making, right? We talk about the behaviors that they engage in that are helpful for them in the classroom and, identifying behaviors that may not be helpful. So we are kind of hitting on these skills, maybe not so directly as our elementary and middle school folks have done in the past, but we're giving them a context in which to practice them. And I think that's really important for our high school kids. We want them to make healthy choices. And that means defining what healthy choices really means. For some students, they may think they know what healthy choices are, but helping them to understand that every choice we make has a consequence, and it's either a positive consequence or a negative consequence. So helping to expand their understanding and helping them to be beyond just the moment is a way to help them really practice making good, healthy choices. And then again, we see at the high school level, just like we do at the elementary level and at the middle school level, those communication skills. How are we creating opportunities for students to practice those? How do we support them in maybe learning better communication skills and understanding that communication skills also includes listening skills? Are we modeling listening skills with them so that they know how to use them, particularly in areas where they may be trying to advocate for themselves? So all of those opportunities are there at the high school level. And I think as counselors, we do a lot of these things and maybe just aren't connecting that, that this really is about career development when we're talking about these social emotional skills that we're building within them. Then finally, career development. The state requires you all to do a career interest inventory. I know that they do one in middle school too, and that you use these to have conversations with students to help figure out what it is that they would like to do, what they're interested in. When we look at what, what's their aptitude, what are they good at, what do they enjoy? All of that work is really important in helping students to kind of navigate the specifics of their career plan, particularly if they've not had some of the prior work on career awareness and career exploration. We see a lot of that, particularly in the early years of high school. When we give them opportunities for work-based learning, that is absolutely contributing to their career development. When we're letting them see, this is what this job really looks like. Sometimes students may have kind of a Pollyanna perfect view of a particular job. And while we hope all of us have found jobs and all of our students will find jobs that bring them satisfaction and joy, I've yet to find a job or know of a job that's 100% fabulous 100% of the time. So making sure that they're making choices and thinking about entering a career with like a realistic vision of what that looks like is really important. So these are the things that we know you guys are already doing around career development. And it sets the stage when we think about how do we start integrating social emotional learning and development within this career work. And again, you'll see the thread of academic support as well, because I just really believe that all three are done together. So we talked a little bit about the profile of the post-secondary student, modern day. We've talked about what career development looks like in terms of like we want our students to achieve college and career readiness. I want us to take a look at kind of this idea of readiness versus preparedness. I am very guilty of always referring to college and career readiness, but sometimes I feel like that doesn't do it justice because it's more than just readiness. When we think about preparing our students and making sure that they are ready to be successful in whatever they do after high school, there's really a couple different components that we want to think about. And if we can split it up using the terms readiness and preparedness, I think it helps to clarify not only what we need, what all students need for us to do, but I think it also really helps to showcase how we as school counselors can play a specific role in helping students transition successfully from high school to post-secondary. So if you think, I want to challenge you to think about a student. Maybe it's a student you've worked with, maybe it's your child, maybe it's a friend. And let's say that they went off to college. They went to a 4-year university. They had done really well in high school. They made good grades, just looked like this, ideal student. Nobody ever had any question about them being successful as they move on into post-secondary. So let's say the student has gone off to college and is experiencing a 4-year university for the first time. Were any of you all, let's see if I can say this in the right way, would you be surprised if that student did not do well, that they struggled, that they maybe had a drop in grades, maybe that they didn't stay at that 4-year university? We see this in students who are maybe prepared for post-secondary, but not ready for post-secondary. And so I want us to kind of keep that student in mind as we talk about the differences, as I think that'll help us to get a really good picture in how these two concepts are differentiated. When we talk about readiness and preparedness, we're breaking down kind of that profile that we talked about in terms of what does a student need to know. Preparedness is really the academic requirements, the knowledge and information that they need about content areas that make them ready to participate successfully in the academic coursework at a post-secondary institution, right? So they know that the content, right? Again, we see those students who did really well in high school, scored really well on all the tests, good grades. They are prepared to move to the next level of academic rigor, right? That's preparedness. What not often happens, what can happen, happens more than we would like for it to, is that those students are not ready for post-secondary. And when we talk about readiness, here's where we're talking about the non-academic stuff, right? The college knowledge, the success skills, mental wellness, hope. Maybe they've never been on their own, and so they don't know how to navigate a new setting on their own. Yes, they're smart and they have the academic pieces, but if they don't have these readiness skills, then they're not going to be successful. And so those really smart kids that we think, oh, they're going to do really well in school, if we've not given them the opportunity to learn and practice readiness skills, then the chances of them being successful and staying and completing a post-secondary credential at a 4-year university is really much lower. So as school counselors, I think we get a chance to really to be a lever of change and a lever of support, because so much of what we can do is around building success skills. It's around tending to our students' mental wellness and teaching them what that means and how they can take care of their own mental wellness. It's instilling hope in our students so that they can persevere and that they will stick with it and not give up. And so I think as counselors, that's what gets really exciting to me to think about. We are not in the academic classroom. We're not responsible for teaching those academic skills that are so focused on in K-12. We have all the tests, we have all the recognition, and not that those are bad things, but if I'm responsible for teaching a student math, oh, they're in trouble. Like, I know this about me. I'm not a good math teacher. But when it comes to being able to teach students what it means to be successful and how to practice those skills, what it means to take care of their mental wellness, what it means to hope and believe that tomorrow can be better, that I can do that, right? That's my wheelhouse. And so when we think about connecting this work that is more tied to that social emotional development, we see that it's critical to the success of students going into post-secondary. Without it, they're much less likely to be successful. So let's dig in and talk about kind of what these success skills are, or what the readiness skills are. Thinking kind of a broad definition, when we talk about success skills, this is the knowledge, the skills, work habits, character traits, those pieces that we know are important to success in today's world, especially as we think about in school and in career. So the skills that they need have previously been referred to as soft skills or real world skills or 21st century skills. All of that kind of falls into this category. That for me, I think success skills is a great way to define that, because it really is about being successful, not just in school, not just in work. It's also important in relationships. And if our students we can help foster the development of these skills, then we've really helped contribute to them continuing on their pathway to reaching whatever goals that they have. Part of that is because a lot of those skills focus on developing healthy relationships, how to support one another in the classroom and in the community. What does it mean to be a member of a community, whether it's a classroom or a member of the global community that we all can be a part of. Those are the things that we're talking about when we talk about success skills. So share some specifics. This is the most I've talked in a long time. Oh, bless y'all for listening to me all this time. We're going to get some sharing out here in just a little bit. So we talk about success skills. Specifically, we're talking about being able to set and attain goals. We're talking about decision making, organizational skills, being responsible, having integrity, communication skills that include both speaking and listening, collaboration, being able to work together towards a shared goal, having some critical thinking skills, and some creativity, I think is really important too. One of the pieces of information that, or statistic that I got at one point when I was at the state that just really fascinated me, and it was exciting and terrifying all at the same time, was that like 95, no, that's a lie. Over 50%, I'm mixing statistics. Over 50% of students who now would be middle school age are going to have a career in something that hasn't even been created yet. Like, so their job is going to be doing something that is currently not being done, which is like super exciting. It's also super scary because, like, how do we prepare them for that, right? If we don't know what they're going to be doing, how do we help them? Well, so we help foster creativity, because they'll be coming up with these ideas as they use critical thinking skills to solve problems. They'll be creating new opportunities for career and occupations. So as we give them opportunities to practice creativity, to practice critical thinking, to have a sense of responsibility as a community member, we're helping them prepare to be in that space where they are figuring out, they're coming up with a new career that they can do. And we see this historically. How many years ago was somebody being a YouTuber? Like we didn't even have YouTube, let alone know that somebody could be a YouTuber, right? But now we know that, like, people do that. They make lots of money that way. That you could have a career as an influencer, right? Like, we just thought that was something that all good adults we all should be influencing people. But now you can get paid to simply influence, and there are now social media marketing positions. 20 years ago, not so much. So we see, even though it seems like wild when I try to think about what kind of jobs are these kids going to have? Like, it's been happening. And so as we help our students to practice really thinking through issues and problem solving and being creative and dreaming outside the box, we're helping to prepare them to be whatever the next thing is that's coming down the pike. So I think that's really important for us to remember as we think about helping foster these sense of success skills. The next part of readiness is around mental wellness. And the more studying I've done, the more I've just felt really more positive about the phrase mental wellness. I think we hear mental health a lot. We hear about mental health problems. But when we talk about, physical wellness, that's usually said in a really positive light. It has this positive connotation. And so for me, thinking about mental health in a positive way, kind of referring to as mental wellness feels very positive and kind of norms it a little bit and makes it not something that only some people deal with. We know in this field that one's mental wellness is as important as their physical wellness. And so helping our students to take care of themselves, not just physically, but mentally, is really critical to their success. So how do we define mental wellness? What does that mean? Well, the World Health Organization actually did it for me, so I didn't have to do that. But they define mental wellness as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities. They can cope with the normal stresses of life. So it doesn't mean they don't have the stresses, but they know how to use appropriate coping skills. They can be productive and fruitful in their work. And that they're able to make some kind of positive contribution to his or her community. So when we think about mental wellness, we're not, again, picturing somebody that's like living on an island all to themselves, but that they recognize where their strengths are. They understand how to utilize appropriate strategies to cope with life when it happens. They can be productive and contribute in a positive way. And I think, I would hope, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would think I could, that we all want that for all of our students. We all want them to find this, to be in a place where they could say that they do recognize what they're good at. They do have appropriate coping skills. They can be productive and they can contribute in a positive way. And so what does that look like? How do we do that? Well, again, you're going to see lots of really specific skills that are already parts of our counseling program, already parts of the things that we're doing. Many of these were mentioned as we looked at career development across the trajectory from awareness to exploration to planning. We're doing some of this work. And so hopefully you're starting to see how this is all integrated together. But specifically, when thinking about mental wellness, we're thinking about self-management and physically, emotionally, in terms of relationships. Are we able to manage ourselves, to exercise self-control when necessary? How do we manage our stress? Again, thinking, this morning we talked about anxiety, and we have a lot of students that feel anxious. Kids are under a lot more stress today than they were years ago with social media, with all of this information that they're taking in. That does create more stress for them. So how are we teaching them to manage that in a healthy way? How do we teach kids about boundaries? I do remember this morning, I think, when Megan was asking what we've learned, I saw somebody quickly on the chat, it went by that somebody wrote, I need to have better boundaries. That is not uncommon in this field because we are a helping profession and we work with our heads and our hearts. We care a lot. And sometimes that makes it really hard for us to set boundaries. But we know that if we don't set boundaries, that looking at the next one, that we won't have balance in our life, and that in order to be the best that we can be for our students, we do need to have that balance. And so how can we help our students learn that? There have been many times that I thought, man, I wish I'd learned that when I was younger. I would have saved myself a lot of stress and worry, I think, had I learned how to set healthy boundaries in a respectful kind of way. How do we help our students with that? How do we help them find balance from the student that may be pre-pandemic overscheduled, involved in all the activities all the time, going nonstop? That's not balance. To the student that, comes to school and then that's it. They don't have other things happening in their life. And there's lots of reasons why a child would be on either side of that spectrum or in the middle of it. But how do we help students to find balance and to be okay with it, and not, I'm going to steal a Brene Brown word, and not feel guilty or shame for exercising boundaries and balance. It's not healthy for our students to spend all night, all weekend, working on assignments and homework. That's not healthy. It's just not. So how do we help students, especially those that feel really driven and feel like they've got to constantly perform? How can we help them to be kinder to themselves and to operate with grace, and to nurture and foster other aspects of their development? I think is a really important skill that we can help our students learn. Emotional literacy. We talk a lot about literacy in terms of reading and academics, but do our students have the capacity to articulate their feelings and what they're experiencing? And if they don't, how can we help develop that? How do we give them words that accurately express what they're feeling and what they're wondering, so that we can help them navigate through some of those situations? I mentioned mindfulness this morning as a helpful technique. It's a great technique for mental wellness. Just being present, taking a minute, just giving yourself permission to block out all the other, and just to breathe and to be aware of what's happening physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally inside of us. I think is really important and can help them certainly with some self-management techniques. When we can take a moment to stop and be aware of what's happening in us, so that we can choose a better and appropriate management strategy. Also talked about this morning, focusing on effort rather than perfection. I think there are some of us that do seek the perfect moment, the perfect lesson, the perfect saying, the perfect whatever, and that's just unattainable. Like, let's just be real. We're not perfect, and we don't need to propagate this idea with our students that they can be perfect. But what they can do is they can control their effort. They can control how they approach projects and assignments and challenges, helping to build their self-efficacy so that they believe in their ability to be successful, helping them to redefine success so that it doesn't include perfection. Is really important and has an impact on the positive self-image. I think for a lot of kids, if you asked them, to describe themselves, unfortunately, a lot of students would start off with negative things they don't like. And that's not healthy. And, as an adult, I struggle with that. It's almost easier to identify all those things that we don't like about ourselves than what we do. And I've yet to understand why we are that way. When I have friends and colleagues and, even working with students and clients, I'm the first to say, focus on, let's come from a strength-based place. Let's focus on the positive. But yet in the day-to-day practice, it's real easy for me to give attention to the stuff that I can't do or the stuff that I want to change. And so I think if we can reflect on that ourselves, it can help us to see the importance of helping our students to focus on the positive. And positive self-image is not, I can do all things all the time. This is what I do well. This is what I like about myself. These are some things that need some work, physically, emotionally, socially, like all of that is rolled up into that self-image. And, you know, they're fighting what they see on social media, on the internet, on TV and movies and TikTok and all the things, all the filters that, you know, everybody can use that send the message that who they are is without the filter is not enough. So I think it's really important that we try to help our students celebrate the good that's inside of them. And then if there are things they want to change, let's figure out healthy ways to make that happen. Also included in mental wellness are the relationships we have with others. And so we want students to be able to develop and maintain appropriate relationships. I know that this is one of our standards, and school counseling standards. We know that this is a challenge for some of our students. And I love my middle school folks out there, you know, teaching those kids to develop and maintain appropriate relationships can be hard because sometimes those relationships change 3 times a day, right? Like it can be a challenge. But even as quickly as some of those drama-filled moments change and they're best friends and they're not best friends, those are all opportunities to talk about what does it mean to be in a positive relationship? What does it mean to be a good friend? What does it mean to be a good partner? I think that those are really important skills. We've seen over the past 9 or 10 months, the dire need, I would say, to respect and celebrate diversity, to acknowledge that we are different, and to celebrate and to learn and to grow, and not to use diversity as a means of attack, a mean of hurting others. So, you know, all the work that we do to help students celebrate and respect diversity, I think is just so important, especially right now. Thinking too about interpersonal skills, you know, how we interact with other people, how just even talking with different people. Do we talk differently with adults than we do with our friends? Are we able to communicate in more than 140 characters on Twitter, which now they don't even tweet. I realize that's like old people space now. But you know, how do they communicate without doing a quick dance on TikTok, right? Like, do they have these skills? Because they're going to need them. And that's going to be important in terms of developing appropriate relationships, particularly in terms of career, and the relationships that they're going to need to foster and to maintain in their chosen career space. And I think one of the most important skills that I have learned in my adult life, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, is the need to be flexible. That sometimes things are not going to go the way that we want them to. And that can be on a day-to-day basis, or that can be life goals that cause your plan to change. And so helping our students to handle when there is change, you know, some folks have trouble with that. So when we can teach students the skills to take a moment when something happens that requires them to change or to do something different, and really teach them what that looks like, and how they can navigate that successfully, we're really helping them to, we're investing in their future, both career-wise and just as they interact in the various other roles and responsibilities they have in their life. So again, as we think about, you know, student being ready for post-secondary training and education, if they understand and can practice these mental wellness skills, that they're going to be more likely to persist and to be successful, to complete whatever program or training that they're doing for their future career. And it helps them to navigate their personal world in a better way too. So there's payoff both in their college and career readiness, but then just as a member of a community and a family and a group, in terms of practicing their mental wellness. So the last piece of those readiness skills that I want to talk about is hope. And I think sometimes folks underestimate the power of hope, right? Hope is that belief that something is possible, right? That something can happen. And so I heard someone say this to me and it just stuck. And I thought, oh gosh, even when I'm struggling, like I do practice hope. And it was one of those like, okay, I can embrace this. How many of you set an alarm to get up this morning? Right? If you set an alarm, it meant that you had every thought, feeling, belief that you would be here today and that you would need to be woken up so that you can be a part of the world that is yours, right? So even a simple act of setting an alarm means that you believe that tomorrow is going to be possible for you, that you're going to be here tomorrow, right? So if we look for those little ways that we can say, oh, you know what, that is being hopeful. Like, because I mean, we don't have a guarantee that when we go to bed, we're going to wake up, right? Like, unfortunately, I've lost folks that I care about who go to bed and pass through the night. So we don't have the guarantee, but we still act in that sense of hope. Like tomorrow is coming. Tomorrow is a new day. You all have managed to show up for this virtual learning world because you believe that eventually you're going to get back to whatever normal is going to be, right? So we're expressing hope and we're living a hopeful life, even if we're doing it in these minute ways that may not seem super significant. But for someone who's struggling with hope, like helping them to identify those can be really powerful. So what does this mean in terms of our students? When we think about hope, kind of the characteristics that we need in order to be hopeful include the ability to persevere, to keep going when things get hard. If we don't have hope when things get hard, we quit, right? We just quit. That doesn't mean that every time you quit, it's because you don't have hope, but as a general rule, hope allows us to keep trying and keep believing that it's possible. I think when we really practice creativity, that's an expression of hope, especially when we're creating things into being that weren't there before, that we're seeing what's possible. That can be very that can inspire that sense of hope because who knows? Remember, all those students are going to have to create their own job. Like they get to hope into existence, something exciting for them to use their life for. We also see a sense of optimism with people who are hopeful. They do believe good is out there. They are glass half full kind of folks. They're the power of yet. They're those that get up every day, even when things look like it's not going to go our way, and they keep trying. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think lots of us as school counselors have this capacity within us because sometimes we have to help our students keep going when it seems like for them that there are no other options. So helping to instill that in our students is really powerful. Also thinking future forward. So not completely discounting the past, but thinking ahead, thinking about, when we get to this next space. It's not about living in the future, but it's being aware that it's out there and that they have an opportunity to impact what it looks like for them. So when I get to high school and take these courses, I'm going to find out if I really do want to go into, health education, or I really want to go into concrete management. Just thinking about a couple of the possibilities they have. That's being future forward, and that's being hopeful, like, and believing that I do have a future and it is out there. I think being resilient also kind of goes along hand in hand with persevering, but getting back up, not letting yourself be knocked down and stay there. Like, yes, this gets hard, but you know what? I'm still going to get up and I'm going to try again. How do we teach our students to be resilient? How do we help them get back up again when life knocks them down? And how do they see that they have the capacity to get back up again when life knocks them down? That there are people around that will help them, but they can absolutely help themselves and help them get back up and try again. We also see with hope that there's a willingness to try. And sometimes I've seen in my past students who are afraid to try, or maybe they're tired of trying. Maybe they've had to try so much that they're just tired. So giving them space to process that, but encouraging them, even if it's just one more try, that willingness to, okay, I'm going to do this one more try. If they didn't have hope, they wouldn't do it again, right? You don't practice, making 100, try to make 100 foul shots on the basketball court. You don't keep going if you think that there's no chance that you're going to make it. The ball's going to go in the net. That was a terrible sports analogy. Basketball's not my sport. I'm sorry. I should have thought of football. But they have to believe and be willing to continue to try in order to maintain that sense of hope. And then finally, I think our students, they need to be courageous. They need to be able to stand in the face of fear and move forward. Being courageous is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to move in spite of the fear. And so helping our students to develop that courage, to pursue what it is that they want for their life. For some, it might be a huge courageous act. Maybe they're thinking of doing something that is outside of the norm for their family, their community group. And that requires a lot of courage, a lot of willingness to do the hard work. But they have a sense of hope about finding that career, that job that is what they are innately, they feel created to do, or what they feel like they have the skill to do, how they can get back. So all of those are really key, I think, in developing a sense of hope. So we know what research has showed us is that to be successful, we need our students to be both prepared and ready. So they need the knowledge. They need to be able to be ready to move into the academic rigor level that post-secondary requires. But they need those success skills. They need to have a sense of mental wellness and a way to nurture their wellness. And they need to believe in the possibility. They need to have a sense of hope so that they can navigate this new experience that will help them to achieve their goals for their career. So I'm going to take a breath. What is this? How do we then connect this to social emotional learning? I'm going to imagine, because I do know many of you, and I do know a lot of what's happened in the district regarding social emotional learning, that as we've talked about these skills, as we've talked about developing these characteristics, that the connection has been clear. You've seen it. You've gone, oh yeah, that's all that SEL stuff. But just for funsies, I want to talk specifically about SEL to make sure that one, we do see the connection, and how a lot of the skills that we've talked about fit really nicely in with the structure of SEL, particularly the competencies that Castle has developed. And then we'll talk about, so what does that look like in terms of actually integrating the work? What does that mean in my day-to-day? How will tomorrow be different now because I have a better idea of how to integrate SEL with career development? So define SEL as the process through which children and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills that are necessary to manage their emotions, understand their emotions, to set and achieve positive goals for themselves, to feel and show empathy for others, to establish and maintain those positive relationships, and to make responsible decisions. Again, hopefully, even as I read that definition, that some of those other skills that we've talked about were like, well, yeah, it's already there. We see how they connect. So we know the importance of social emotional learning. It was not that terribly long ago that school leaders and even folks that influence what happens in our buildings did not necessarily see the value of social emotional learning. And so I think one of the really great contributions that Castle and similar organizations have made is to be able to connect SEL to really specific student data that we use as a measure of success. And that other people use as a measure of success. And so what we have found, and this is from Castle 2019, so pretty recent statistics, that through scientific research, SEL has showed students gaining skills and having better social emotional skills, improving their attitudes about themselves and others, and going to school. There is more positive classroom behavior, which is always a nice benefit. And we've also seen an 11 percentage point gain on standardized achievement test. And I think that this is a really significant piece of data. Again, not a surprise to those of us on this call, right? We know that if a student has a strong sense of self, if they know how to make good decisions, if they have positive relationships, if they can set goals, if they manage themselves, then yes, of course they're going to do better in the classroom. But people like data more than they like just to hear us tell them, yes, we know this is what's happening. And so now we have the data there. And so as a strategy to increase academic achievement, which tends to be a goal that, some school leaders, and certainly sometimes the public holds schools accountable for, is if we need to improve that, well, then let's talk about SEL. Let's work on improving our students' social emotional development, and let's really invest some time and energy there. In addition to those gains, they've seen students display fewer conduct and behavior problems. They've experienced less emotional stress, and lower evidence of drug use, all really positive steps. It would be hard to argue against, well, no, we're not going to do SEL because these things aren't important. That would not be a very smart argument for someone to make, because we know ultimately that these all serve to benefit our students. Also, a couple other studies. So this is a little further back in 2011. They did a meta-analysis of a bunch of studies. And here's the thing that Leigh has learned in her graduate school. Like, I could know how to do a meta-analysis now. Before, I might not have known. But they study all the studies that have been done and all the studies collectively included over 270,000 students. And again, they were able to find links to gains in student social emotional skills, that positive classroom behavior. It's there. It's not just one study. It's over and over and over again. Reduced risk of failure, less conduct problems, less emotional distress. we're seeing that connection between academic achievement and what we have traditionally defined as success is impacted with social emotional learning. It is, it's there. The data shows it, science shows it. So that's exciting because it validates the work that we know is important, because we've been doing social emotional type work for a long time. And so it's nice to have that extra validation in a language that our school leaders and the public as a whole use to kind of to judge and evaluate schools' work. So the definite plus. Another, I thought, really interesting piece of information as it connects to career development is when talking with I forget how many CEOs, I have this written down, a whole bunch of business folks, CEOs, said that of all the skills that we want our future workforce to employ and to have, that problem solving and communicating clearly are as important or more important than the actual technical skills they need to complete the job. So again, those of us that have been doing this work a while and who have worked with folks in workforce, we hear them. We know that they say, we need kids who are responsible. We need workers who can problem solve, who can work together, who will be responsible. Those, we can teach them to do the actual skill, but if they don't have the problem solving skills and those, what has traditionally been referred to as those ready or soft skills, what we want to call readiness skills, they don't want them. They would much rather have someone that can really display positive success skills than someone that knows a whole lot about the actual job. And I think that's further demonstrated by the World Economic Forum. The top skills that they have identified for the workforce all involve some level of social and emotional learning, all of them. So I think that further supports how important it is for us to do this work. And as we learn how to better integrate the SEL with the career development, we're again building our students' capacity to be good employees as they move into the workforce. Another really interesting slide that I want to share with you all, just because I think it gives some good student perspective. And looking at, this is from 2018, the perspectives of high school students on how well they feel like their school has prepared them. And so this particular study looked at current high school students and then students who had graduated from high school and had moved into post-secondary work and then the workforce. And so 3 particular questions I think of good, interesting pieces to look at in terms of how they feel like their school did in preparing them and helping them to learn, the academic material, that preparedness that we talked about earlier. We saw a pretty high percentage of current high school students and then post-high school young adults who felt like their schools did a pretty good job or a great job at that. So I think, we're doing a good job with the preparedness. The second question that I thought was really interesting was, how well do you feel like your school did at preparing you for success after high school? And we started to see kind of a little decline. Current high school students, 68% said they felt like their school was doing a pretty good or great job with that. What was really interesting is those students who had graduated and had gone out into life after high school, and we see a pretty significant decrease. Only 48% felt like their high school had done a pretty good or great job in preparing them for life after high school. And then finally, they were asked how well they felt like their school prepared them for a job or career after high school. And we continued to see a decline. Even within current high school students, 62% said they feel like their school was doing a great or pretty good job. And again, just barely over 40% of students after high school feel like that that the school has done a great or pretty good job. And I think it's important for us to take the minute to look at this, because it goes back to that student voice piece that I talked about this morning. The students are the ones that we do this work for. And so to be able to get some information from them regarding how well we think we do is really interesting. I saw this firsthand a couple years after we had launched the Tennessee Promise. And, at the state, working with THEC and TSAC and working with all of you. I know we did. We bombarded you. We put all this information out. We were feeling really good about the outreach that we had done around Tennessee Promise. And what some data that we collected from students 2 years after the fact showed us is that we had not done such a good job. We thought we had, because we thought we had done what we thought needed to be done. And what kind of the pause that it gave those of us that were in some of those planning meetings is, okay, we need to hear from our students. We need to understand what is a better way to communicate with them? What is a better way to make sure they understand? We had lots of students that still felt like that was an ACT requirement with Tennessee Promise. And for those of us that have been doing this, we're like, were you kidding? Like, no, of course not. How'd you miss that? Well, a lot of them missed it. So thinking about then how do we prepare our students and how do we make sure that they're ready means that we've got to talk to them. We've got to help them communicate with us what they need, which gets back to some of that self-advocacy. And not that we abandon everything and just do only what the high school kids tell us, our elementary students tell us, or what our middle school students tell us. But I think we do have a responsibility to hear them and hear their voice and let them be a part of this work. And in doing so, we make it much more relevant for them. But also it again reinforces the skills that we're wanting to build within them. So as you move forward, I challenge you to think about, how are you including students and getting their feedback and their insights in this work, because ultimately it's for them. And so I would encourage you to think through that. And if you've got some great strategies, please share them. Share the wealth if you figured out some good ways to do that, because it's not easy. I think our default is to do what we know to do, and while that's not always wrong, sometimes we miss the mark. So that being said, as we move forward talking about some of the SEL competencies and what it looks like when we integrate the two, having that student feedback, I think, is really, really beneficial. Okay, so let's talk competencies. Self-awareness. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. One, I am watching the time, but because I know MNPS has spent so much time and efforts around SEL that I know that this information is out there. I do know that it's handled through a different office, and so you're maybe not as close to it as you can be. But let me reiterate that school counselors, school social workers that are still here, you all are critical to this work. This is your wheelhouse, and you absolutely should be a part of practicing this work and supporting teachers and supporting students in the development of their social emotional development. All right, so self-awareness, the ability to recognize one's thoughts and emotions and how it influences their behavior. That's a little bit of the cognitive behavioral therapy that I mentioned this morning that was beneficial with students with anxiety. So you're, again, seeing a little bit of crossover that you can use in multiple places. When we talk about self-awareness, being able to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations. So again, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you need to work on in a realistic way, I think is kind of a key component of that self-awareness. Having optimism, being confident, there's that hope, but not overconfident. We're not talking about arrogance and boastfulness, but being okay with, this is what I do well. I don't do everything well, but this I do well, can be really empowering for students. So when we think about the goals, why do we want students to be aware? Because we want them to be able to identify their emotions, build their emotional literacy. We want them to have an accurate self-perception, recognize their strengths, because that's critical in finding a career where they can be successful, where they can contribute and be productive. If they seek a career where they are not skilled, where they don't have an aptitude, it is not likely that they will find a great amount of success in that. So the self-awareness piece is important in terms of career development. We want them to have self-confidence and know the difference between self-confidence and being boastful and arrogant. And then again, that self-efficacy, the belief that they can do, the belief that they can persist and figure things out. That is all part of self-awareness. The second competency that we're going to talk about is self-management, the ability to regulate one's thoughts and emotions and behaviors in various situations, and understanding why that regulation is different in different settings, controlling their impulses, not going for immediate gratification, being able to work towards goals, to set out an action plan and move a step at a time towards that. All of that is part of self-management. I'm going to give you all a small break from my voice, and I have a little video to talk more about self-management and what it looks like.
Let's talk about self-management, a set of skills that are critical to kids' success in school and beyond. Self-management has several names and many concepts associated with it. We're also going to talk about it in terms of marshmallows, stop signs, squeezy balls, and teaching. Let's start with the marshmallows. In the late 1960s, a Stanford professor named Walter Mischel wanted to gauge young children's ability to delay gratification, so he conducted a groundbreaking self-management experiment. He and his researchers took preschool kids and sat them in a room in front of a marshmallow or other treat. The researcher would say, "I'm going to leave for 15 minutes. If you would like to eat the marshmallow, then eat it. If you can wait until I come back, I'll give you a second one and you can eat them both." That's it. That was the whole experiment. Mischel found that despite their best efforts, 2/3 of the kids ate the marshmallow before the researcher came back. In the years since then, the experiment has been copied many times with kids from different communities, ethnicities, and backgrounds in a range of countries all over the world. Typically, 2/3 of the kids eat the marshmallow. Here's where the results of Michel's experiment get really interesting. After running the experiment a bunch of times in California, his team tracked down all the marshmallow test kits they could find 10 years later, and 20 years, and 30, and 40, and they found some startling results. The kids who were able to wait for the second treat scored better on the SATs, once you control for IQ, were rated as more academically and socially competent by their parents, and had a greater ability to plan, handle stress, and concentrate without becoming distracted, even decades later. There has been a bunch of research that builds on or extends these findings. One larger, more comprehensive study followed 1,000 children born in the early 70s in Dunedin, New Zealand. Focusing on self-management, researchers interviewed the children as they grew from 4 to 11. They also gave questionnaires to parents, teachers, and peers. Then they tracked down the original kids when they were in their 30s. They found that the children's ratings on self-management between the ages of 4 and 11 correlated with whether or not they were high school or college graduates, addicted to alcohol or drugs, economically stable or living paycheck to paycheck, involved in criminal activity. All these results lead to one big question. What does this mean for the kids who ate the first marshmallow? For that matter, what does it mean for the kids who don't have self-management between the ages of 4 and 11? Does this mean if the child hasn't developed the right self-management skills early, her whole life path is much worse? Here's what Walter Mischel says about this exact issue.
We're talking about correlations that are significant. We're not talking about a destiny for an individual. So I want to be very clear that a branding would be completely missing the point, particularly since the most exciting findings about the marshmallow experiments are the ease with which it is possible to change an individual's ability to delay gratification. And there are ways to do that. There are very straightforward ways to do it that connect with how the brain works. The interpretation to be taken from the findings is that this is an enormously important skill. It has predictive qualities. It has protective effects, but it is teachable. It is changeable.
In fact, Mischel showed that self-management could be taught in an experiment similar to the marshmallow test. In this version, researchers gave the kids helpful ideas before the test. They said, imagine the marshmallow is actually a flat picture, or a cloud, or there is a bug crawling on it. Suddenly, the kids could wait far longer. So there are strategies and techniques you can give kids to help them nurture and grow their self-management muscles, many of which can help students in longer-lasting, more profound ways. These strategies extend beyond envisioning a situation differently. They involve teaching kids to avoid certain situations, modify their surroundings to reduce distractions, manage their emotions constructively, shift their attention, organize to complete tasks, and plan how to overcome obstacles that may arise. Still, despite growing research on the topic, we're in the early days of learning the best ways to help students build self-management skills. The techniques that work, or even just what to focus on, can vary from student to student in a single class. But one thing we do know is this. Teachers in the classroom and parents at home tend to notice self-management issues the most when something goes wrong. A student who loses track of his assignments and comes to class unprepared. A student who constantly interrupts peers and teachers. A student who fidgets constantly and can't focus in the classroom. This could be any kid, at any age, at any ability level. What adults normally do is see this behavior and tell the student to stop. Stop messing around, you have to do your homework. Stop fidgeting. Or like in Michelle's experiment, don't eat the marshmallow. Now, when you do that, you're basically telling the child you have to stop and you have to figure out how to do it. You've just put it all on the child. And the problem is, maybe the child doesn't know how. For whatever reason, they never learned this particular self-management skill. Saying stop doesn't fix that. So what if rather than saying stop, you say, instead of what you're doing now, which isn't working too well, why don't you do this? For that kid who is fidgeting all the time, what if you give him a squeezy ball and say, squeeze this ball as much as you want because you need to do something with your hands and that will make it easier for you to pay attention in class. Instead of just saying stop or no, you're saying, here's a strategy to try. One of the findings of the original marshmallow test is that it's primarily a test of whether a child has learned particular self-management strategies. Kids who stare at the marshmallow and simply try their hardest not to eat it, well, they pretty much always eat it. The kids who have a strategy to shift their attention by singing a song, walking around, putting their forehead on the table, covering their eyes, or any number of things are best able to wait for the second marshmallow. As we now know, shifting attention is one of a broad range of self-management strategies. What works and what to focus on can vary from child to child. But the self-management strategies as a whole are teachable, and like muscles, they can be strengthened in all students.
So I think for me, I love that video because I think a couple things that stand out. One, that's a great explanation of self-management and some of the research behind it. But I think even when we're teaching our students self-management strategies, even if we don't make that connection between what they're doing in college and career, the research has showed that they will be more successful. right? That they're set up for greater success if they can utilize self-management techniques. So I think that part is a great reminder of the power that we have to really impact a student's future. And also, I think one of the other things that always stands out every time I watch this video is, when they looked at the long-term impact, and they went back and they followed up with the students who were able to show some self-management and not eat the marshmallow, that for all students, they were able to see impact and greater levels of success. So I think that this is a great way to address some of our equity issues with some of our students, that we know that there are gaps in opportunities and access. And so when we teach self-management strategies, what the research has told us is that all students benefit. So it can be, while it doesn't erase the gap that some of our marginalized students experience, it can certainly be a way to give them a leg up and to help start to close that gap. We've given them a skill unrelated to the academic. We've not tied it to an academic specific skill, but that has proven to be helpful as students move into adulthood. So I think taking that and kind of fitting it into this idea of career development and integration of SEL, with that, don't negate or minimize the work that you do to help students achieve skills to help to manage themselves. Some of the goals that, and what that looks like is impulse control, managing their stress, self-discipline, self-motivation. We know that sometimes is really hard to get students to be internally motivated, intrinsically motivated, helping them with goal setting, organizational skills. And again, a lot of these we've seen in some of the success skills and the mental wellness skills and hope that we talked about earlier. So again, just reinforcing that this work really does tie together. Another competency is around social awareness and being able to view different perspectives and to develop empathy for others, and to understand that there are differences and differences in expectations and behavior and what's considered the norm for a particular group, and that's okay. I think that is such a key skill that we can help our students develop, that will be beneficial to them moving forward in lots of different settings, specifically looking like being able to take various perspectives, showing empathy, appreciating diversity, again, respecting others, and what that looks like. We know how important that is in their day-to-day world, and how important it'll be in terms of their future and their career. The next competency is relationship skills. We've talked about it before, that we do not exist in isolation. We do have relationships with the people around us. When we work, we have professional relationships. And so we want our students to be able to develop and maintain those relationships in a way that's appropriate for each type of relationship. We want the relationships to include clear communication, active listening, cooperation, being able to support versus negatively influence the other in relationships, handling conflict constructively. There are a lot of relationships that have conflict, and that doesn't have to mean the end of the relationship, but teaching students, how do we navigate that? How do we handle it when there's something different and we have different feelings or ideas or beliefs about a particular topic or idea? and something's we think of it differently than someone else that we're in a relationship with. Being able to recognize when someone needs help, and being able to offer that when needed, to know how to ask for help. I think relationships are so rewarding, but they are work. There's not a particular formula for all relationships, because it involves people, and people are different, and we bring our experiences and our beliefs and our what we value to all of our relationships. And so understanding what that looks like and how to navigate that successfully, I think, is really important for students. I have this is a short funny clip that I think helps just show that, again, relationships involve people, and that if we're going to be in relationships with people, we have to be open to hearing and to allowing people to be themselves, and that there isn't such thing as a friendship algorithm. So I'll let Sheldon share a little bit with us.
You're just in time. I believe I've isolated the algorithm for making friends.
Sheldon, there is no algorithm for making friends.
Well, hear him out. If he's really onto something, we could open a booth at Comic-Con, make a fortune. See, my initial approach to Kripke had the same deficiencies as those that plagued Stu the cockatoo when he was new at the zoo. Stu the cockatoo?
Yes, he's new at the zoo.
It's a terrific book. I've distilled its essence into a simple flow chart that will guide me through the process.
Have you thought about putting him in a crate while you're out at the apartment?
Hello, Kripke. Yeah, Sheldon Cooper here. It occurred to me that you hadn't returned any of my calls because I hadn't offered any concrete suggestions for pursuing our friendship. Yeah, perhaps the two of us might share a meal together. Yeah, I see. Well, then perhaps you'd have time for a hot beverage. Popular choices include tea, coffee, cocoa. I see. No, wait, don't hang up yet. But what about a recreational activity? I bet we share some common interests. Tell me an interest of yours. Really? On actual horses? Tell me another interest of yours. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have no desire to get in the water till I absolutely have to. Tell me another interest of yours.
Uh-oh, he's stuck in an infinite loop.
I can fix it. It's interesting, but isn't ventriloquism by definition a solo activity? Yeah. Tell me another interest of yours. Is there any chance you like monkeys? What is wrong with you? Everybody likes monkeys. Hang on, Kripke. A loop counter and an escape to the least objectionable activity. Howard, that's brilliant. I'm surprised you saw that.
Gee, why can't Sheldon make friends?
All right, Kripke, that last interest strikes me as the least objectionable, and I would like to propose that we do that together tomorrow. Yes, I'll pay. All right, goodbye. All right. Time to learn rock climbing.
So I think, if you are a fan of The Big Bang, you have an opportunity to see quite frequently some challenges to building relationships that Sheldon encounters, but just helping us to help our students understand that relationships are dynamic and they're changing, and that there's a lot of give and take, and it requires a commitment to those relationships, and a willingness to sometimes not to step outside of ourselves a little bit, which I think, again, helps as we think about the skills that our students are going to need as they move past high school into post-secondary and into the world of work. So the final competency that, the final one we'll talk about is responsible decision-making. And we know that means making constructive choices about their behavior, their interactions, that they have a structure with which to make those choices. They consider ethical standards, safety concerns, what's expected, consequences, and their own well-being for themselves and for others. And so when we think about responsible decision making, that isn't a difficult place for us to like get excited about, right? Like if we want our students to make responsible decisions, we want them to make good choices. We know that looks like being able to correctly identify problems, to be able to analyze a situation, to come up with possible solutions and evaluate those, to reflect on their experiences, to see, you know, what did they learn? What might they have done different? Those are all opportunities to be a better problem solver. And finally, we want them to have a sense of ethical responsibility to themselves and to their communities. And when we build those skills, we're helping them also not just be good decision makers, but again, going back to those concepts around success skills and mental wellness and hope. They're all there together. So we've touched on you know, what it takes to be career ready, college and career ready. We talked about what career development looks like across K-12 with the awareness, with the exploration, with planning. We've looked at the difference between preparation and readiness. We know that as counselors, we have an opportunity to really impact the readiness kind of idea with success skills, mental wellness, hope. We've spent time then looking at SEL, and we've seen where there is already overlap, where we're seeing that, you know, work on goal setting for career development also benefits goal setting for social emotional learning. So we've got these two concepts that just inherently have a ton of overlap for us. So how do we integrate it? How do we intentionally provide opportunities for students where they are aware that these two ideas are integrated together? And y'all, I'm here to tell you, it's not rocket science. Like it's really not, because really it's about connecting the dots. If you're going to remember one thing from today, it's connecting the dots for the students. Just helping them see how their academic skills are connected to those social emotional skills that are connected to their career development skills, and how each of those concepts then leads to their success, however they define success. It's just, we've got to connect the dots for our students. So what does that look like? What do we need to do to achieve that one thing? Well, we need to be collaborative, right? We need to be intentional, and we need to be aware of barriers. So what does it mean to be collaborative? Historically, a lot of these skills have been taught in isolation, right? One teacher may be teaching one piece, or we may do a career lesson, but we don't connect. We're not talking about those social and emotional skills while we're doing career fairs. What research has told us about learning is that when we can teach things within context, that they naturally occur, that students will have more authentic learning opportunities and will learn better. So think about who else is doing this work. Who are the other folks that are teaching these skills? How can you collaborate with them? How can you work together to be sure that both of you are connecting the dots for the students, that you're intentionally, when they talk about self-management in the classroom, how are they talking about that in terms of careers one day, you know? And as a school counselor, our role may be to come in and help the teacher see how to make those connections, to be able to give them examples, or to co-teach with it. Like those are great ways that we can collaborate. As we bring in different groups into our school to partner with and work with, how are we connecting to make sure that if we've got a career day speaker, or we've got someone in talking about college opportunities, are we talking about self-management, right? Because going through the college application process requires a lot of self-management. When students are maybe learning to write essays that they'll use on college applications. How well are we partnering with our teachers to really explore self-awareness? Are we prompting students to really think deeply about who they are, and then how to communicate that in a written essay? So it's really thinking about, like, who else does this, and then how can we work together? You all that have known me know I'm a work smarter, not harder kind of person. And there's a lot of work that has to be done. And so if you all can work together and share the responsibility, not only is it going to make your lives a little bit easier, but it will create those more authentic learning opportunities. And students are starting to hear the same messages in lots of different places. And that's important. That starts to resonate with students. If they are starting to hear the same things from a variety of folks in their life, if they see that sense of the connection in various aspects of their school community. Think about clubs, school student clubs, and how do they support this work? There's just, you can be really creative in how you partner with folks to do this work. But the partnership is really important to be able to connect those dots for students. So we look at social emotional learning. We know that what works well, Castle has identified this, the pieces that make it successful are a coordinated approach. So you've got that coordination, collaboration, that integrating with the academic instruction. So again, that collaboration. I've talked a couple times about the importance of student voice and getting them involved, the importance of a school climate and what the school values. We talk about adult SEL. We know that's important. Thinking about discipline in a supportive and restorative way, having a continuum of integrated supports, getting parents involved, having the community involved. So again, we know that social emotional learning has identified this collaborative nature as being a really important part of having effective SEL programs in your school. One of the other pieces that I wanted to talk about are being intentional. In the past, folks have been, typically we do kind of a check the box approach. Have I talked about SEL? Have I talked about self-awareness? Have I talked about relationship skills? Have I talked about, good, healthy choices? Have I talked about these academic requirements, the knowledge and information? So you have there on the screen all of these pieces as separate entities. And so when we look at it that way, it does become more of a check the box kind of thing. If you'll reorient and try to envision SEL through the lens of readiness, through the lens of college and career, like that integration, then we can start the crossover pieces, the places where they're already integrated, become more clear. And it's easier for us to be intentional about the activities and the programs and the opportunities we give students. So that when we're doing something around self-management, we're also connecting it to the success skills and emotional wellness and hope. As we talk about responsible decision-making, we're thinking about what does that look like? How is responsible decision-making supported through success skills? Emotional wellness, making healthy choices, making the decision to not give up, to believe, to be optimistic, and to have that hope. We become much more intentional about our work, and it becomes easier to connect the dots, actually, when we look at this work through these filters versus the whole, like, everything separate in a separate space. So I have a few examples, and I'm very aware of the time. So just a couple of ideas. This is not the end of this list. There's a ton of stuff that we could do. If I was there with you in person and I had another 30 minutes, I would let you guys share, because I'm certain that this group of people, you all are so smart and so good at what you do that you all will take this and run with it. You are doing some things out there that all you need to do is tweak and connect those dots, and you are there. I have zero doubt about that. But for some that may be feeling a little like, I'm not sure where to start, here are some ideas. So an self-awareness activity that you could provide or conduct with your students. Have students write their own autobiography, or maybe they're drawing a picture, or maybe they are writing a play. There's lots of different formats that you can take it, doing a PowerPoint. But have them include, what do they think that life is going to be like at 50, and what did they do to get there, right? To have them start to think through those specific steps. So that really fosters a sense of self-awareness. It also helps look at some of the success skills, because we're talking about goal setting. We're asking them to think critically, to evaluate, predict, and think about what were the steps that were necessary. We're asking them to be creative. In terms of mental wellness, we're asking them to practice self-management. They're going to focus on this skill. They're focusing on effort. We want them to portray a positive self-image. We want them to highlight relationships that were meaningful. So that supports all their mental wellness. In terms of hope, we see being creative again. We're asking them to think future forward. We're asking them as they tell their story. We may have to pull it out, but what were some areas that were hard or difficult, and how did they persevere? We're asking them to think of themselves in the future in a positive way, so it's optimistic. So just as you're doing this activity and then processing with students, highlighting how that's a great example of a positive self-image, or that's being really future forward, or that story about having to endure this, time or this challenge showed perseverance. That's starting to connect the dots for the students. Just again, one activity can really foster all of those skills and give students a chance to practice those. I'm going to skip ahead just because of time. Relationship skills, create a job listing for a friend, what would be required to be a successful friend. There's a lot of opportunity for crossover there. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Well, now I may just have to, my computer's slowed down. Are you all seeing that still? It disappeared on my screen. I'll just tell you in case it's not there. Having students write a how-to guide, like if you've got middle school students, having them write a how-to guide for 5th grade students, so they can talk about decision-making, responsibility, communication, maybe having them do it in a group, stress management, being flexible, trying to achieve balance, being resilient, having courage. Those are some ways that you can connect to those readiness skills, and also self-management. Another one that I actually took this, and I think she's retired, but this came from a former school counselor in Metro that used to have this international fair. And I thought, what an amazing opportunity this is to celebrate different cultures. Each class could take a different country and they could study the country and prepare, a booth or presentation. Great opportunity to show respect for diversity, to show creativity. Just the organizational and responsibility skills it takes to work as a group can be really impactful, and can this kind of activity can really offer an opportunity for those types of things. They're going to develop and maintain relationships. They may maintain or develop relationships with community partners to come in and share different aspects of a different culture or different country. So there's lots of different ways that you can approach this. I think the last one is kind of based on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, where instead of Ebenezer Scrooge, it's a group will work together to write a story of a high school student who's getting to decide, it's almost graduation time. And they have, visitors from the past, the future, and the present to explore some of the decisions that were made and some of the, how those decisions impacted their plan and their goals and what they wanted to achieve. So again, there's a lot of creativity that comes into this, but at the end of the day, what this is really about comes back to connecting the dots, being collaborative, being intentional, helping to identify what barriers students might have to connecting the dots. Are there some academic struggles that students have that might make this a more difficult experience for them in thinking about moving forward and what post-secondary looks like? Are there environmental considerations? Does their family not want them to go to school? Does their family, is their family business, and the expectation is that everybody goes into the family business? There could be lots of things that we need to know about our students that will impact how well that they will make those connections, right? Thinking about social impact, social influence and factors. Are they wanting to move into a career? Are they wanting to move into a different area that might challenge their current social structure? Knowing our students and then helping them navigate that within the context of trying to connect those dots can ensure that all students benefit from the work that you do in integrating college and career readiness with social and emotional learning, so that students can find success. Because at the end of the day, what we want more than anything is for our students to be successful. We want them to find their passion, to find an opportunity, a way that they can contribute to the world, whether it's just in a small way or in a big way. We want them to see that their inherent value, and that through their uniqueness that they have an opportunity to do something that nobody else has ever done before, because they bring all of those pieces together with them. So I hope that has been helpful in kind of how you approach this work. I'm happy to answer questions. I know there's just a few minutes left, and I don't want to take away. I know y'all probably have some closing things out, and you may be real excited about getting out in the snow that I've heard has fallen in your area. But I just want to say again that one, I'm just so honored to get to be a part of your day, and that inspired by your willingness to come and learn, not only about how to integrate social emotional learning with college and career readiness, but also about how to support students experiencing anxiety, especially as you move ahead in the course of the next couple of weeks. It's just know that from the bottom of my heart, it's always so good to be with you all, even if it's on Zoom, even if I can't see your sweet faces, that I'm just so proud that you all have been part of my story. And I hope that if there's anything else I can do moving forward to support you, that you will not hesitate to call on me, because I believe in what you're doing. It's so important. And I believe that all of you all are huge difference makers in the lives of your students. So with that, I'll stop talking. I will turn it, I guess, back over to.
Thank you, Leigh. I appreciate it. And we all appreciate hearing the two different sessions today that you provided. No, I know many folks here, including myself, are glad that you were part of our story, and that you're just continuing to advocate for counselors and students, and just we'll be excited when you have that doctorate, right? You'll have to let us know. But doing lots of great stuff. So thank you for being here today with us. And I know all the counselors and social workers are excited to get your book and to use that in the work that they do with our students. So we appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. And hopefully by the fall, and you all will hear when I get that doctor, you all will know.
Definitely. Well deserved. Lots of work to celebrate. That's for sure. So everyone else, thanks for being here today. Hopefully, yes, you will get to go outside. If you have kiddos, you'll get to go play with them. Mine was out with his dad while he is off today, sliding down the street with his sled, and just no cars were there, so we were okay to go. But definitely enjoyed the sessions, and we're looking forward to having kids back in school. You guys, I know some of the counselors and social workers will stay virtual along with the virtual students. Others will be going back. Just kind of looks different at every school, but the reality is we're back once we get past these snow and ice days, right? And we're looking forward to things coming back to a norm or somewhat norm with a little more routine. So we hope that you enjoyed the sessions today, and we look forward to you guys getting to shop a little bit and use your vouchers to find some additional resources that you can use as you're doing school counseling or social work in the schools. And we just hope you have a great week. We'll wait to see what this weather does. But thank you, school counselors and social workers, for all that you do for our MNPS students, staff, parents. Like Dr. Battle mentioned this morning, you guys are all an integral part of connecting kids, making sure they have their basic needs met. And of course, ensuring resources are available to them and that they get the supports that they need. So we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a great rest of your afternoon, a good week, and please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you need anything. The handouts that Leigh went over today are on the main website here, and so you can download them if you're interested in doing so. This will remain up for a bit so you can access that. And then like we mentioned earlier, the deadline's about a week from today to put in your order for your books or materials that you'll order. And then hopefully we'll get them out to you in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So have a great Monday, and thanks again.